Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're here for yet another Apollo relive from the Apollo 11 mission. Tonight is the last night of the Apollo 11 program. So I'm joined tonight by my good pal, Brian S. What's up, Bri?
Hello, hello. I
How
hope
are you,
everyone's
sir?
doing well.
You are low. I don't know
Am
if
I?
it's me, but you
Am I
sound
am I
low.
still low?
Yes,
Ah, jeez. Ah, jeez.
that's a little bit better.
I moved a thing out of the way.
Oh,
I'm just gonna
okay.
turn up the gain on my mic. It's fine. I'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out eventually. Um, so tonight we're gonna do the press conference with the Apollo 11 astronauts, Buzz, Collins, and what's the last guy's name? Uh, Armstrong, Neil, Buzz, Neil, and Michael Collins. How did I remember Michael Collins and forget Neil Armstrong? Anyways, this is the press conference that they gave to kind of explain what they were doing post the mission. Then we'll look ahead into the Artemis program and kind of a trailer for the upcoming Artemis program or the return to the moon from NASA. And then next week, we're going to get into a new topic. We're going to get into light speed. So, right? Isn't that what we decided?
I guess so. Sure.
Yeah, we did. So we'll get into light speed, a little bit of space time, some general relativity, that good stuff. So we'll get into more scientific concepts instead of historic concepts next week. So, because obviously we have different opinions on light speed, but yeah, let's say hello to everybody and we'll get right into it for tonight. So scroll, scroll, scroll. Brian doing mod duties? What the hell?
Yeah, I know. It was weird.
It is weird. Let's not do that again.
I won't. I promise. I'm sorry.
Ever. Ever. I'm just so taken back by that. We should just cancel the stream.
Probably.
No. So Brian S. AP, hello, hello. Dog Mama, hello. Comer, what's up, buddy? Digger, hello. It was only like 2 minutes. Pretend like we just dumped into Mighty from Jenny's. It makes me happy. It does. It does. I have to look into that because it might only be 250 and you guys are pretty close. Because it used to be half of monetization to dump. Do you know, Bri, right offhand? For redirect?
Wait, what? No, I have no idea.
Brian has no idea. But I'll look into it. So it is Brian's birthday. Happy birthday, buddy.
It's not my birthday.
What's up, it's Triton? Oh, we got an Aussie raid too. Aussie dumped me too. Dump on me? What's up, HT? That is very true. If it's working, don't touch it. What's up, OG butt stuff? David, hello. All right. So, like I said, we're going to be getting into the press conference that happened right after, well, shortly after they returned, after they left their quarantine, that kind of stuff. So, do you have anything to add before we get into it?
Just a quick question. So is it with the press secretary of the president, or like who's doing the press thing?
I actually don't remember who's doing it. It's not the president. So this is post meeting. It's with somebody from NASA, but I forget who the person is right offhand. We'll see in just a moment, but maybe. Those are obviously aliens trying to interrupt the broadcast so nobody learns about what happened up there.
Ooh, it's a panel.
Fuck you, Comer. Apparently that's applause on a really bad sound system. Really bad.
I mean, this was back in the day when they weren't actually transmitting sound.
Right. Hey, Forbidden. I don't know if I said hi.
Welcome to the Manned Spacecraft Center. This is the Apollo 11 press conference. The format today will consist of a 45-minute presentation by the Apollo 11 crew, followed by question and answers. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Apollo 11 crew, astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin. Neil?
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July.
I liked how you could tell what a woman was back then.
Took place in the last decade.
I'm happy they didn't have shaved head and purple hair.
We all here and the people listening in today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its developing and unfolding in the past months and years.
So
It's
this
our
is after the
privilege
quarantine, I take
today
it.
to share with you some of
I thought I said hello to you.
details
Hello, Dog Mama.
of that final month of July that was certainly the highlight for the three of us of that decade. We're going to divert a little bit from the format of past press conferences and talk about the things that interested us most.
The things we care about.
In particular, the things that occurred on and about the moon. We will use a number of films and slides which most of you have already seen, and with the intent of pointing out some of the things that we observed on the spot, which may not be obvious to those of you who are looking at them here from the surface of Earth.
All right, say something now.
What?
The flight, as you know, started from.
What? What do you mean? Do you?
And I think that was characteristic.
What do you mean? Say something.
Of all the events of the flight. The Saturn gave us one magnificent ride, both into Earth orbit
If I turn you way
and
up.
on a trajectory to the moon. Our memory of that actually differs little from the reports that you have all heard from those previous Saturn V flights, and the previous flights served us well in preparation for this flight in the boost.
See,
as well as
I can hear myself just fine. I
phases.
was looking back into the audio.
We would like to skip directly to the translunar coast phase, and
Okay, I definitely heard you, but didn't hear you. Like I could see you.
undockings,
That's weird.
the transposition and docking sequence.
This was our first look at the magnificent machinery which had been behind us up until this point, the booster. Of course, the first and second stages have long since separated, but this shows the LEM nestled inside the third stage, the S4B, after the translunar inject burn. this maneuver was an interesting combination of manual and
Okay, say something
automated
now.
techniques in that we
Saying something now.
programmed the onboard computer
Perfect.
to make the
So it's getting
turnaround,
better.
and then these final maneuvers were made completely manually.
I don't know if that kills the stream though.
As I approached
Let me listen to this stream
the
real quick.
LEM, I had an easy time because I had a docking target, which is not too clearly visible here, which allowed me to align the probe and the drogue, which is the dark spot
Sounds
you
good to
see
me
on
still.
the upper right.
The stream does? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
During this time, I also checked out the proper vehicle response to my stick inputs, and here shortly you'll see the actual docking somewhat speeded up. There's the point of contact,
Thanks, Dog Mama.
and in just a second you'll see a second right there, a second small indication of the retract cycle when the 12 dock.
For the lunar module, of course, is in a sense upside down relative to the command module.
This is in lunar orbit, showing the separation of the lunar module from the command module as viewed through my window. This was a busy time for me in that I was taking these motion pictures through the right-hand window. At the same time, I was taking still photos through the left-hand window, and also flying my vehicle and probably poorly, and taking a close look at the LEM as he turned around. My most important job here was to make
now I
sure
can
that all
actually hear
his
you, and it
landing
doesn't
gear
change
were down and properly
The actual
locked
stream, so.
prior to his.
I know it's fine on your end, but
I
I had a PC update, so I couldn't hear anything Brian was saying at all, so I couldn't hear him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The right side up or
Now I
upside
can.
down. I'm
I
not
fixed
sure
it.
which.
Good.
It looks more like, to me, it looked more like a praying mantis than it does a first-class flying machine in this view, but it was a beautiful piece of machinery. The landing gear are.
What the
at
hell are they
top,
looking
and,
at?
You can see
They're looking at a
probes that
slideshow,
indicate
I
lunar
assume,
contact
or
as
some kind of
spin
slides of
wires extending
pictures.
upward from the landing gear.
Of course, before we could undock, as is shown in this picture, we had to complete the activation. Now, the day before we undocked, we entered the LEM and went through an entire switch configuration check, and we exercised the various communication modes. In retrospect, since we did have a little bit of communication problems on the following day during power descent,
Don't
we would,
gaslight me, X-Comer.
recommend that we might make a more thorough check of this on the day before descent.
I saw a picture there.
On the day that we did finally enter the LEM for the landing maneuver, we went through a staggered.
I assume they
sequence of
can't,
suiting.
you can't see
We
it
found
on
that,
the
with all the
video recording they were
simulations that we
doing.
had run back here in Houston.
Well, maybe.
How it's
tied to
hard
our
to take
simulations in the
pictures
Cape,
of
we were quite confident that we
computer
would be able to
screens
complete
because of
this,
the lines
LEM
that appear or
activation
whatever.
in a given time period, which was
Right.
approximately
Here,
4
we're
hours.
gonna actually flip to a different one because this one you can, and I don't know if it's just remastered or what the case is, but you can actually see it. So we'll start over. Because that was weird. We couldn't see what the hell they were talking about. All right, yep, this one actually has pictures, so we'll see the pictures this time that they're referencing. Right, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if they could just not see it with the camera that they were using or what, but
You guys just about a sec.
this one, whether it's remastered or shot differently or what, you can actually see it. So the other one was from NASA. This one's from a third party. So
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Manned Spacecraft Center. This is the Apollo 11 press conference. The format today will consist of a 45-minute presentation by the Apollo 11 crew,
Let's just figure the sound a little bit better on this one
question
too.
and answers.
I think it's a
At
little
this
bit
time,
better.
I'd like to
It,
introduce
I
the
would
Apollo
assume it's
11 crew.
remastered. Like I
Astronauts
said.
Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin.
They're all so shiny.
It was our
Stage
pleasure
lights.
to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people
I don't know what
listening
those
in
are.
today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its developing and unfolding in the past months and years. It's our privilege today to share with you some of the details of that final month of July that was certainly the highlight for the three of us of that decade. We're going to divert a little bit from the format of past press conferences and talk about the things that interested us most, in particular the things that occurred on and about the moon. We will use a number of films and slides, which most of you have already seen.
We've done terrible
And-
things to other people.
Hold on, wait.
with
No,
the
we did do that.
intent
We sent
of
monkeys to the
pointing
moon.
out some of the things that we observed.
We did
on
send
the
monkeys
spot,
first.
which may not
Not that
be
I'm saying
obvious
that.
to those of
Never
you
mind.
I am.
who are
Sorry, what?
looking at them here from the surface of Earth.
I think it's just the natural cadence of them
The-
back in the day. They seem to
The flight, as
speak
you know, started
slower and more
promptly.
concise. But
And
no,
I think that was
I
characteristic
don't think there was a huge difference
of-
between his
of all the events of the flight.
cadence before and after.
The Saturn gave us one magnificent ride. Both
But he does talk very slow,
into
very
Earth
drawn
orbit
out.
It sounds like he's trying to choose
And
his
on
words
a
very carefully, which
trajectory
I've
to the
heard a
moon.
couple people say that in the chat too.
Our memory of that actually differs little from the reports that you have all heard from those previous Saturn V flights, and those the previous flights served us well in preparation for this flight in the boost as well as the subsequent phases. We would like to skip directly to the translunar coast phase and remind ourselves of the long chain of events that actually permitted a landing, starting with the undockings, the transposition and docking
Injectors were loud and
sequence.
hot, and a bitch to put away afterwards. That's what gophers do. Yep.
This was our first look at the magnificent machinery which had been behind us up until this point, the booster. Of course,
Yeah, there
the
we
first
go.
and
Now
second
your pictures.
stages had long since separated, but this shows the limb
Oh yeah,
nestled
okay.
inside
That
the
looks
third
great.
stage, the S4B,
Mhm.
after the
Considering.
translunar inject burn. This maneuver was an interesting combination of manual and automated techniques in that we programmed the onboard computer to make the turnaround, and then these final maneuvers were made completely manually. As I approached the LEM, I had
Hey, Desert.
an easy time because I had a docking target, which is not too clearly visible here, which allowed me to align the probe and the drogue, which is the dark spot you see on the upper right. During this time, I also checked out the proper vehicle response to my stick inputs. And here shortly, you'll see the actual docking somewhat speeded up. There's the point of contact. And in just a second, you'll see a second, right there, a second small indication of the retract cycle when the 12 docking latch is made.
We made 2 entries into the lunar module. This is our first view of the inside of this. The final activation was made on the day of powered descent.
That's so cool.
On the 2 previous days, when we entered, we removed the probe and drogue and found that we had a rather long tunnel between the 2 vehicles. On entering the lunar module, one had to do a slight flip maneuver or a half gainer to get into position for the lunar module, of course, is in a sense upside down relative to the command module.
This is
They
a
had to
lunar
reorient
orbit
and
showing
reconnect.
the separation of the lunar module from the command module as viewed through my window. This was a busy time for me in that I was taking these motion pictures through the right-hand window. At the same time, I was taking still photos through the left-hand window and also flying my vehicle and probably poorly and taking a close look at the LEM as he turned around.
He's the OG
My most
Texan
important
driver.
job here was to make sure that all
Well, I
his
can only look
landing
at
gear
dreams a
were
little bit.
down and properly locked prior to his descent and touchdown. This is his yaw maneuver, and the white dots you see are the landing gear pads. This gives you a better idea of the detail available with the 70 millimeter. Of course, this is a still, and shows the LEM either right side up or upside down. I'm not sure which. It looks more like, to me, it looked more like a praying mantis than it does a first-class flying machine in this view, but it was a beautiful piece of machinery. The landing gear are at the top, and you can see the probes which indicate lunar
So cool.
contact as thin wires extending upward from the landing gear.
Of course, before we could undock, as is shown in this picture,
That is
we had to
awesome.
complete the activation. Now, the day before we undocked, we entered the LEM and went through an entire switch configuration check,
Hey, Alex.
and we exercised the various communication modes. In retrospect, since we did have a little bit of communication problems on the following day during powered descent, we would recommend that we might make a more thorough check of this on the day before descent. On the day that we did finally enter the LEM for the landing maneuver, we went through a staggered sequence of suiting, and we found that with all the simulations that we had run back here in Houston, or with Houston tied with our simulations in the Cape, that we were quite confident that we would be able to complete this LEM activation in a given time period, which was approximately 4 hours. We managed to get 30 minutes ahead of the time, and it allowed us to get a more accurate platform alignment check at one point. After the undocking maneuver, we went through a brief radar check, and then the command module executed a 2 foot per second maneuver away from us so that we would both be able to independently exercise our guidance system through a star alignment check, which we did following this separation maneuver. Now, this occurred in a vicinity close to the landing site, and you can see at this point the command module is traveling right over the center of our targeted point. He's approaching now what we call the cat's paw. Following this separation maneuver on the backside of the moon, we made a descent orbit insertion, which is slightly over 70 foot per second maneuver that lowers our altitude down to 50,000 feet. We had 2 guidance systems working for us, and they behaved perfectly. Both of them agreed extremely closely as to the results of this maneuver. Following this, we used the radar to confirm the actual departure rate from the command module.
This is a view of the descent trajectory area as viewed through the LEM window during our activation. In the bottom right of the photograph is the crater Maskelyne, and in the bottom center is the mountain called Boot Hill. Immediately above Boot Hill is a small sharp-rimmed crater called Maskelyne W, which was the crater that we used to determine our downrange and cross-range position error prior to completing the final phases of the descent. The landing area itself
Using
is
landmarks for a highly
is in the
precise activity.
smooth area at the top of the picture.
That's how I drive. So
Just before we
Has
arrive
to
at
be
the
equivalent.
shadow, or what's called the terminator. We had seen a number of pictures from Apollos 8 and 10, which gave us an excellent understanding of the ground track over which we would pass during the descent. We're now looking out the right-hand window of the crater, and there's Maskelyne W. It occurred approximately 2 to 3 seconds late and gave us the clue that we would probably land somewhat long.
Because it had hair on it.
After completing those position checks, we rolled over face up so that the landing radar could lock on the ground and confirm our actual altitude. Now, this picture doesn't show it, but at this phase in the trajectory, we were looking out directly at the planet Earth.
Huh.
In the final phases of descent, after a number of program alarms, we looked at the landing area and found a very large crater just in the very left top corner of the picture. The camera is located in the right window and looks to the right, and it just barely sees this boulder field we're passing over right now. We're at 400 feet, and those boulders are about 10 feet across. This was the area which we decided we would not go into, extended the range downrange, and saw this crater, which we passed over, this 80-foot crater, in the final phases of descent, and later took some pictures of. Now you can see the exhaust being, the exhaust dust being kicked up by the engine, and this was some concern in that it degraded our ability to determine not only our altitude and altitude rate in the final phases, but also, and probably more importantly, our translational velocities over the ground. It's quite important not to stub your toe during the final phases of touchdown.
no, really?
And once settled on the surface, the dust cleared immediately, and we had an excellent view of the area surrounding the LEM. This is the view out the left window. It shows a cratered surface, pockmarked with craters up to 15, 20, 30 feet, and many smaller craters down to a diameter of 1 foot. And of course, the surface was very fine-grained. We could tell that from our view out the window, but there were a surprisingly large number of rocks of all sizes.
This is the view out the right window. Up close to the horizon, you see a boulder field that was probably deposited by some of the impacts in the craters that were behind us. You see, most of the craters have rounded edges. However, there is a variation in the age of these, as we can tell by the sharpness of the edge of the crater. The general color of the terrain looking down sun was a very light tannish color. This blended as we looked more across sun to a more sharper, well-defined features and more of a gray color. During the initial time period after touchdown, we went through various sequences to prepare us for immediate abort or liftoff if we found that that was necessary. We had found we had to vent the fuel and oxidizer manifolds a good bit earlier than we had thought. We went through these various checks and prepared for one liftoff that would occur about 21 minutes after the beginning of powered descent. The ground gave us a stay during this period. We did not have to make use of that. We then proceeded at that point into our simulated countdown, which consisted of checking our guidance systems. We made use of a gravity align feature where the inertial platform of the primary guidance would use the gravity vector to determine the local vertical. We would then compare this with the alignments that we had previously. We also made use of the stars through the telescope and aligning a crosshair by rotating the field of view until the crosshair superimposed on the star. This would give us the angular measurement of the star within the field of view of the telescope. We then determine the distance out by aligning another reticle spiral on this. We went through an averaging technique on board and then fed this information into the computer, and this came up with our various alignment checks. This was all in preparation for a possible liftoff that would occur about 2 hours after touchdown as Mike and Columbia came over for the first revolution. The ground network gave us a stay, and we continued briefly through the remainder of this checklist in our simulated countdown. And at this point, we terminated and powered down many systems on board the spacecraft and went into an eat period.
A number of experts had, prior to the flight, predicted that a good bit of difficulty might be encountered by people attempting to work on the surface of the moon due to this variety of strange atmospheric and gravitational characteristics that would be encountered. It was, in fact, in our view, preferable both to weightlessness and the Earth's gravity. This led us to believe, this in conjunction with the fact that all the systems in the LEM were operating magnificently and we had very few problems, to go ahead with the surface work immediately. We predicted that we might be ready to leave the LEM by
basically like,
8 o'clock.
yeah, this feels
but
good.
Those of you who followed on the ground recognize we missed our estimate by a good deal. This was due to a number of factors. One, we had house cleaning to perform, food packages, flight plans, and all the items that we'd used in the previous descent to be stowed out of the way and prior to depressurizing the lunar module. It took longer to depressurize the lunar module than we had anticipated, and it also took longer to get the cooling units in our backpacks operating than we had expected. In substance, it took us approximately an hour longer to get ready than we had predicted.
Wow.
Really?
When we actually descended the ladder, it was found to be very much like the lunar gravity simulations we had performed here on Earth. No difficulty was encountered in descending the ladder. The last step was about 3.5 feet from the surface, and we're somewhat concerned that we might have difficulty in
That's quite a drop, actually. 3.5 feet.
Activity period.
That is
So we
enough to
practiced,
hurt you if you fall that far.
practice
on
that
Earth.
before
Right.
doing the exercise of bringing the camera down, which took the subsequent surface pictures. Here you see the camera being lowered on what might be called a Brooklyn clothesline.
You got
I
jokes,
was
eh?
operating quite carefully here because immediately to my right and
If they're
off
joking,
the
it must be
picture
going
was
well.
a 6-foot deep crater, and I was somewhat concerned about losing my balance on the steep slopes. The other item of interest in the very early stages of EVA, should it have been cut short for some unknown reason, was the job of bringing back a sample of the lunar rocks, and these photographs show the collection of that initial sample into a small bag, and then that bag being deposited in my pocket. This was the first of a number of times when we
I just threw the moon in my pocket.
found 2 men were a great help. I quickly put up the TV camera.
I mean, you wouldn't have the same force hitting the
And then
surface, but that's
more
still. I mean,
leisurely,
that's still quite a drop.
Buzz and I joined
Seems like
together
an
to,
unnecessary
erect the American flag.
It's a risk. It's definitely a
Risk.
risk.
We found
Right.
on a number of occasions that we were able to help each other in many ways on the surface. You probably recall the times that I got my foot caught in the television cable, and Buzz was able to help me extract it without falling down.
I mean,
Yeah,
they
these
took
guys
so
are
many
not
other
able to-
precautions. Huh? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. They're not
We
able to
had,
move
some
like they normally
difficulty
would
at
be in these
first,
suits either. So him getting his
getting
foot
the
wrapped up in
pole
a
of the
cord
flag to remain
that
into
could
the
be fatal.
surface.
Right.
In
falls,
penetrating the
busts open the
surface, we
fucking
found
suit.
that
He's
most
dead.
objects would go
Yep.
down about 5, maybe 6 inches, and
Or
then
get
it would
stuck.
meet with
Nobody can
a
get to them.
gradual
They only have
resistance.
so much
At
oxygen
the
on
same
board.
time, there was not much of a supporting force on either side, so we had to lean the flag back slightly.
Like in something where
in
they
order
took
for it to,
excessive precautions
maintain
on
its
everything else.
position.
It's kind of weird that they
So many
made
people
a
have
pretty
done so
sizable
much
drop.
to give us this opportunity to place this American flag on the surface. To me, it was one of the prouder moments of my life to be able to stand there and quickly salute the flag.
The rest of the activity seemed to go very rushed. There were a lot of things to do, and we had a hard time getting them finished.
We did find that mobility on
Like
the
at stage
surface
during
was,
transit.
in general,
Yeah.
a good bit better than perhaps we had anticipated it. There
And
was
I'm
a
sure there
slight
was a reason.
tendency
I'm
to,
sure it wasn't just an oversight, but
to
it
be
just seems like
more
an
nearly
unnecessary
toward the
risk.
rear of a neutral stable position. Balance
does seem
seemed to
incredibly
be
risky.
quite easy to identify, and as one would lean a slight bit to one side or the other, it was very easy to identify when this
Can't have
loss
everything.
of
You have to
balance was
concede
approaching.
on some
In
things.
maneuvering around, as you saw, this was one of my tasks fairly early in the EVA. I found that a standard loping technique of one foot in front of the other worked out quite well, as we would have expected. One could also jump in more of a kangaroo fashion, 2 feet at a time. This
Kangaroo.
seemed to work, but without quite the same degree of control of your stability as you moved along. We found we had to anticipate 3 to 4 steps ahead in comparison with the 1 or 2 steps that are ahead when you're walking on the Earth.
We had very little trouble, much
I was
less
saying there
trouble
was
than
stability
expected on
issues,
the
which
surface. It
lends
was a
to
pleasant
maybe not
operation.
make a 3.5
Temperatures
foot
weren't high. They
fall.
were very comfortable. A little EMU, the combination of spacesuit and backpack that provided or sustained our life on the surface, operated magnificently. We had no cause for concern at any time with the operation of that equipment. The primary difficulty that we observed was that there was just far too little time to do the myriads of things that we would have liked to have done. in the pictures we showed earlier, you saw rocks in the boulder field out Buzz's window that were 3 and 4 feet in size. Very likely pieces of the lunar bedrock, and it would have been very interesting to go over and get some samples of those. There were other craters that differed widely that would have been interesting to examine and photograph. And we had the problem of the 5-year-old boy in a candy store. There are just too many interesting things to do. The surface, as we said, was fine grained with lots of rocks in it. It took footprints very well, and the footprints stayed in place. The LEM was in good shape and exhibited no damage from the landing or the descent. It's a picture of the ladder with the well-known plaque on the primary strut. There was a question as to whether the LEM would sink in up to its knees. It didn't, as you can see. The foot pad sunk in perhaps an inch or 2. And the probe in this picture was folded over and sticks up through the sand in the bottom right-hand corner, showing that we were indeed traveling slightly sideways at touchdown.
Considering the
There were a
fact that
wide
they could
variety
have
of
sank,
surfaces here. Buzz
it
is
makes sense
standing
that they would
in
have a
small crater,
3-foot
and it
drop.
gives a very good picture of the
Yeah.
rounded rims of the
No, I
of
can
the-
see that.
what we believe are very old features. The LEM was in a relatively smooth area between the craters and the boulder fields. And we had some difficulty in determining just what straight up and down was. Our ability to pick up straight up and down was probably several degrees less accurate than it is here on Earth, and it caused some difficulty in having things like our cameras and scientific experiments sometimes not maintain the level attitude we expected.
The 2 experiments that you saw in the previous picture were deployed in the scientific equipment bay. We found that getting them down produced no significant problems. And here you see a view of my carrying these 2 experiments out to the deployment site about 70 feet to the south of the lunar module. You have a very good view of the varying depths of this upper surface layer. You see that along the crater rim, the small crater rim off to my left, along this the upper surface appears to be about 2 to 3 inches, and the subsurface has a slope that is rather ill-defined, and one has to be very careful in threading your way around these very small craters. Any long excursions, I feel, would take a good bit of attention as you're moving along to avoid walking along or down the slope of some of these smaller craters. This is the passive seismic experiment that was deployed and has been giving us good returns on the interactions of the moon. We had a little difficulty deploying one of the panels. I had to move around to the far side and release a restraining lever, and then the second panel came out. We had a little bit of difficulty determining, as Neil said, the exact local horizontal. And I think this is due to the decrease in the cues that a person has as to which way up really is. One has to lean a little bit more off to the side before you get this body cue that you're approaching off balance. And of course, the terrain varied considerably in this area. This second experiment is the laser reflector. We've been successful in bouncing laser beams off this. It consists of 100 arrays of corner reflectors. It was quite surprising the resistance that was met in this subsurface medium, and at the same time you see that it did not support very well the core tube as I was driving it into the surface.
This is a close, a double
it was
picture. It's
softer than
actually a stereo
anticipated?
picture of
Sounds like slightly, yeah.
of fine particulate material in the moon. This is taken from a glass, and the analysis of the cause for that characteristic is of
They're saying it was
extreme interest to
fluffy
the
and they didn't
scientific
expect it to
community.
like truly
Second picture
have
taken with
footprints and
that,
stuff like that.
scientific camera shows the nature of
I always figured
the
it sounds
product
kind of
the
like it's
lunar surface
snow,
material.
like it's dry
And
snow.
This picture shows the 80-foot crater,
Fluffy.
which that you observed earlier in the motion picture footage during the final phases of descent. We had very much hoped that this crater would be deep enough to show the lunar bedrock. It was about 15 or 20 feet deep, and although there are rocks in the bottom, there are no evidences on the inner walls of actually getting a picture or a view of the lunar bedrock.
We deposited several items on the lunar surface. I'm sure you're aware of these. One was a disk with 73 messages from nations of the world. There was a patch from Apollo 1 and various medals from the cosmonauts. We also elected as a crew to deposit a symbol which was representative of our patch, that is the U.S. Eagle carrying the olive branch to the lunar surface, and we thought it was appropriate to deposit this replica of the olive branch before we left.
This, after re-entering the LEM, we could see the effects of her in the area where the majority of the walking took place. However, in the left side of the picture where it is not as dark, there was also a good bit of walking, and so that indicates that the walking probably just increases your ability to notice the effects of the strange lighting that Buzz talked about earlier, where the cross-sun lighting is a good bit darker than the down sun.
It was a beautiful picture of the flag. Like the ash of
Following
the
EVA,
at the
we
bottom
had
of the barbecue grill with rock underneath.
We had
Okay.
a sleep period, which in a word didn't go quite as well as we thought it might. We found it was quite difficult to
Yeah, I can see that.
keep warm
Yeah.
when we pulled. Rather difficult for us to sleep. You see mounted in the right-hand window the 16 millimeter camera as it was mounted for taking the pictures on the surface. Following the sleep period, as we're approaching the liftoff point, we progressed with a gradual power-up of the lunar module, which included another star alignment up in front of the instrument panel. It was used to record the various messages that were sent up to us, the whole host of numbers for the particular maneuvers that were coming up that we would copy down. We'd log these on that sort of a data sheet.
What's up,
These
Jacob?
people sound sick.
They do.
This film shows our final look at Tranquility Base before our departure.
It was August of '69, so
And
I
the
don't know that there
ascent
was anything
was a great
Like-
pleasure. It was very smooth.
pandemic-y.
Fucking
We were
black
very,
flag.
very pleased to have that engine light up. Gave us a excellent view of our takeoff trajectory and Tranquility Base as we left. And at all times through the ascent, we could pick up landmarks that assured us that we were on the proper track. There were no difficulties with the ascent, and we enjoyed the ride more than we could say.
Both guidance systems agreed
They seem
very
to
closely
actually
when we
enjoy
were finally
doing this,
inserted into
though.
orbit. I believe
Like,
there was something on the
legitimately
order of
enjoy it.
half a mile or
Oh,
7/10 of
yeah.
a mile difference in the
100%.
apogee in the resulting orbit. Following an alignment check after insertion into orbit, we proceeded with gathering radar data of relative positions between the two vehicles. The solution for the first sequence of rendezvous maneuvers was extremely close and agreed very closely with the value that the ground had given us. The surprising feature of this rendezvous, many of us were expecting a fairly large out-of-planeness due to perhaps some misalignment in azimuth on the surface. We were expecting somewhere up to maybe 20 or 30 feet per second out-of-plane velocity. We found that we didn't even have to make use of a particular out-of-plane maneuver that had been inserted between two other sequential maneuvers. In comparison with many
We were all
simulator
constantly
runs, we
sick back in
found
those days.
this was about as perfect a rendezvous as we could have asked for.
You've noted some oscillations in this film during ascent, and that's a real characteristic. The vehicle, due to the changing center of gravity as fuel is used, does a good bit of 5-degree oscillations throughout the ascent.
This is Eagle is seen by
Everyone and
Columbia.
their dog chain
Or
smoke
perhaps
back then.
half an
Yeah, it
Eagle
could
would
be
be
too.
better, since the landing gear and lower part, the descent stage, of course, remained on the surface.
Don't make your dog smoke.
This was,
That seems
A very
unreasonable.
happy part of the flight for me. I, for the first time, really felt that we were going to carry the thing off at this stage of the game, and it looked like,
Damn, that's so cool.
although we were far from home, we were a lot closer to it than the pure distance might indicate. Neil's making the initial maneuvers here to get turned around, and then again I do the final docking. This is somewhat swifter than real time. The probe, the dark funnel on the top of the LEM, and the docking target below it and to the left in the lighter portion of the LEM. As Buzz said, the rendezvous was absolutely beautiful. They came up from below absolutely as if they were riding on rails. There was absolutely no disturbance or any off-nominal effects during the last part of the rendezvous. Upper right, you can see the RCS quads, and down below the various antenna and other protuberances. This gives you some idea of the rough terrain available on the moon. Of course, the Maria on the front side are smoother than this, but in general, the back side of the moon is quite rough.
Candy cigarettes were so good.
I have
The really good ones.
in general just a series of slides, which, in the interest of
Like
time,
we
I'm
only
not
had
going
running
to,
water for less than
dwell
a
on,
century
but
back in the Stone Age.
just
You know?
like to point out
That's
that we
true.
did take
That's true.
a number of pictures. I believe
parents
from
wouldn't let me
Columbia
have
we
candy
took
cigarettes.
probably 1,000
So do I.
stills,
They were so good.
and some of them show
They were
very
a
interesting
gateway to smoking or
surface
something. I don't know.
features.
My mom was crazy.
various
They were.
types of
Is
unusual craters,
crazy. She's
and
still alive.
some of them pose many riddles, which we hope the geologists will in time be able to answer for us.
Likely.
That line of craters, for example, is difficult to explain, or at least without an argument it is. A newer crater with the white material having come from it. And this is a picture of the solar corona. Neil, would you like to close with that?
During our flight to the moon, we flew through the moon shadow. In fact, the moon was eclipsing the sun, and we took the opportunity to try to take some photographs of it, but our film was just not sufficiently fast to capture the event. However, this does show the brightest part of the solar corona. It extends several moon diameters in addition on each side. They're roughly parallel to that light. But the striking thing to us as observers was not the solar corona, but the moon itself. Of course, it was dark, unilluminated by the sun, but it was illuminated by the Earth. And at this relatively close range, it had a decided three-dimensional effect and was undoubtedly one of the most impressive sights of the flight. As we left the moon after a successful TEI, this is the view that we observed. I think that, at least from where I sit here on the stage, the colors that you see there are quite
That's so
close to
pretty.
being actually representative
pretty.
of the moon as seen from that distance. We were sorry to see the moon go, but we were certainly glad to see the Earth return. We used took a large number of photographs of the Earth on the way out and back, and had our wristwatches set on Houston time. An interesting use can be made of that. If you were looking at this picture and you looked at your watch and your watch said 7 o'clock in the evening, then you'd know that Houston is about 7 o'clock from the evening, and it's about an hour away from sunset. So it would be about 1/24th of an Earth's circumference away from the shadow, which is just about 15 degrees there. So at any time, by looking at our wristwatch and looking down at the Earth, we knew what was underneath the clouds, and it aided us in some ways in picking out what we should be seeing. We could see a large number of details on the Earth's surface, certainly all the continents and islands and details.
They could find Texas pretty
many
easily.
of which you followed perhaps in our discussions over the radio communications, but it was interesting to us to find out how well we could observe weather patterns on not only the worldwide scale, which you see here, but in specific localities. This particular shot does show the coast of North America, the equatorial cloud layers, what we think is probably an intertropical convergence zone, and cirrus clouds over
Hi,
the
Mandy.
Antarctic.
We're ready now for question and answers, and wait for the microphone, and we'll go right down the line, and we'll catch everyone if you'll just be patient. Tom will too.
All right, Q&A.
How much time did you have left in your life support backpacks at the time you got back on board LEM?
I haven't seen the post-flight analysis of the numbers. We had roughly half of our available oxygen supply remaining in the backpacks, and somewhat less percentage in the water supplies, which is used for cooling. Of course, particularly on our first experience with the use of that backpack on the lunar surface, we were interested in conserving a good bit of margin in case we had difficulty with closing the hatch or repressurizing the LEM, or had any difficulties with getting the systems operating again in the normal fashion inside the cockpit.
Colonel Aldrin and Mr. Armstrong, when President Nixon made his phone call to you on the moon, it looked like the two of you suddenly stopped doing everything and stood there and listened and talked to him. It looked there for a moment like you might have been a little bit aware of what was going on. You weren't busy. Was there ever a moment on the moon when either one of you were just a little bit spellbound by what was going on?
About 2.5 hours.
I'd like to ask Neil Armstrong when he began to think of what he would say when he put his foot down on the lunar surface, and how long he pondered the statement about a small step for man, gigantic leap for mankind.
Yes, I did think about it. It was not extemporaneous, neither was it planned. It evolved during the conduct of the flight, and I decided what the words would be while we were on the lunar surface just prior to leaving the land.
I'd like to ask Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and I'm not quite sure how to ask this question, but when you first stepped on the moon, did it strike you as you were stepping on a piece of the Earth, or sort of what your inner feelings were, whether you felt you were standing in a desert, or this was really another world, or how you felt at that point?
Well, there was no question in our minds where we were. We'd been orbiting around the moon for quite a while.
Oh, OG, they did way more than just fart in those suits.
At the same
Trust
time,
Oh, yeah.
We have experienced
There was so much fecal
1.6G
matter in there.
before. We've been exposed to some degree to the lighting that we saw. However, this was, in my case, an extremely foreign situation with the stark nature of the light and dark conditions. And of course, we first set foot on the moon in the dark, shadowy area.
It's a stark and strangely different place, but it looked friendly to me, and it proved to be friendly.
Some people have criticized the space program as a misplaced item on a list of national priorities. I'd like to ask
Shut
any
up,
of the
Debbie Downer.
astronauts, how do you view space
really.
exploration as a relative priority compared with the pressing needs
He's
of
a
domestic
liberal.
society and the world community at large?
We even had them back then.
Well, of course, we all recognize that the world is continually faced with a large number of varying kinds of problems. And it's our view that all those problems have to be faced simultaneously. It's not possible to neglect any of those areas, and we certainly don't feel that it's our place to neglect space exploration.
There was a lot of discussion during the flight, during the power descent portion of the flight, about the program alarms and so forth. And I wondered if you all could describe your thoughts on the subject, how it went, and what advice you might have to offer the crews of Apollo 12 and subsequent flights for this portion of the mission.
Well, I think we pretty well understand what caused these programming alarms. It was the fact that the computer was in the process of solving the landing problem, and at the same time we had the rendezvous radar in a powered-up condition, and this tended to add an additional burden to the computer operation. Now, I don't think that
You're right,
either
Michael.
ground
The
people,
diapers catch it
or
all.
ourselves really anticipated that this would happen. It was not a serious program alarm. It just told us that for a brief instant, the computer was reaching a point of being over-programmed or having too many jobs waiting for it to do. You know, a computer continually goes through a wait list of one item after another, and this list was beginning to fill up, and the program alarm came up. Unfortunately, it came at a point when we did not want to be trying to solve these particular problems. We wanted to be able to look out the window to identify the features as they came up so that we would be able to pinpoint just where in the landing ellipse the computer was taking us.
Buzz was carrying on a rapid-fire conversation with the computer at that point, but I think we really have to give the credit to the control center in this case. They were the people that really came through and helped us and said, continue, which is what we wanted to hear.
It's what we're going to do anyway.
Gentlemen, you're about to
True.
take some tours. And I wonder what your feelings are.
I don't think
Is
we've
that
ever had a
perhaps
black
the
man
most
on the moon.
difficult part of the mission, or are you looking forward to it?
The first Artemis
Certainly
astronaut is a
the
black
part that we're
woman.
least prepared to handle.
What do you consider the most important piece of advice and recommendation that you will give the Apollo 12 crew before the
D's?
takeoff for the moon in November, gentlemen?
I don't know D's was there.
I didn't hear the first part. The recommendations for 12 on which phase?
Will be the most important piece of advice or
Overall.
recommendation for the Apollo 12 crew.
Or is that German?
It was
I think we
scary.
can
That's
say
what
that
it was.
overall, we wouldn't change the plan that we used or the plan that they intend to use. Now, there are a large number of individual details which we think could stand improvement, and we have had the opportunity in the past couple of weeks to go over those details and with the crew members and various people.
That was rapid back then, Husky.
Around the program.
I mean, hell, that
In
was
general,
rapid
I'd
for
say that we
NASA in the
wouldn't recommend
90s.
Any major changes to the plan?
It's rapid now.
Will you recommend any
Nah,
changes in
SpaceX is going up all
procedures
the
for
time.
the moonwalking and
That's true.
exploration procedure? And did you find that your suits were mobile enough in view of the changes, or would you recommend further mobility features for them for operation on the moon?
Well, one gets used to the type mobility that your suit affords you. And of course, we would like to always have more and more dexterity with arms moving and fingers moving. These things are under study.
You think it was French?
Of course, the Apollo 12 mission will have two different periods of EVA, one early in the mission and a sleep period, and then another EVA following that. We've, in general, looked at their plans and talked to them about the duration. We talked to them about a brief period at the beginning of their EVA for their familiarization with the EVA, the 16G environment. I don't think we have any particular recommendations for how they should change.
It
their
didn't
mission.
sound
It
French
is
to
a
me.
Continuing
It sounded very
involvement of EVA
Slavic.
capability and scientific exploration that they're undertaking on that flight.
I'd like to ask Colonel Aldrin if you'd elaborate a little bit on your comment earlier about having to anticipate where you were going to walk 3 or 4 steps in advance as compared to just 1 or 2 on Earth. Did you mean that in respect to avoiding craters or deep pits or what?
Well, I mean it with respect to the inertia that the body has in moving at this rate of 5 to 6 miles an hour that we found to be fairly convenient. Due to the reduced force of gravity, your foot does not come down so often, so you have to anticipate ahead and control your body movement. And since your foot is not on the surface for a long period of time, in each step you're not able to bring to bear large changes in your force application, which would enable you to slow down. So in general, we found we had to anticipate 3 or 4 steps ahead instead of maybe the 1 or 2 that you do on the surface of the Earth.
You're now national heroes, and you've had a couple of weeks in isolation in the LRL to think about that. What are your initial feelings about being heroes? How do you believe it will change your lives? And do you think that maybe you'll get another chance to go to the moon, or are you going to be too busy being heroes?
What kind of loaded question is that?
That was a terrible question.
No.
You're going to be
Try to get an answer to that
heroes, or do you
question,
feel like you're going to be
might
heroes?
have to spend as
Do you
long
like being
preparing
heroes?
as we had to prepare for Apollo 11.
It's rather heroic.
In the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, we did have very little time for meditation. It turns out we were quite busy throughout the time period with the same sorts of things that the crews of past flights have done after their flights. The debriefing schedules and writing the pilot reports and getting all the facts down for use of all the people who will include that in the future flights.
I'm struck from the movies and the still pictures by the difference in the very hostile appearance of the moon when you're orbiting over it or some distance from it, and the warmer colors and the apparently relatively more friendly appearance of it when you're on the surface. I'd like to ask Colonel Collins if he gets that same impression from the pictures, and the two of you who were on the moon, what impression you have along those lines.
Well, the moon changes character as the angle of sunlight striking its surface changes. At very low sun angles, close to the terminator, at dawn or at dusk, it has the harsh, forbidding characteristics which you see in a lot of the photographs. On the other hand, when the sun is more closely overhead, a midday situation, the moon takes on more of a brown color, it becomes almost a rosy-looking place, a fairly friendly place. So that from dawn through midday through dusk, you run the whole gamut of it. It starts out very forbidding, becomes friendly, and then becomes forbidding again as the sun disappears.
Neil, were you and Buzz, did you have the feeling you were getting a little low on fuel during the landing? Were you concerned at that point about being low on fuel? And the second part of it, I suppose, for Buzz is, out of your experience, how tough do you think pinpoint precision landings will be on the lunar surface on future flights?
Okay, yes, we were concerned about running low on fuel, and the range extension that we did to avoid the boulder field and craters, we used up a significant percentage of our fuel margins, and we were
but there was all kinds of redundancy.
quite close to our legal limit.
Legal limit, like
I don't think there's aliens on the moon. There's nothing there for the aliens.
Well, I think it requires some very pinpoint
nothing for us
determination
either,
of the
but we
orbit
still-
that the vehicle is in before it begins powered descent. And this requires extreme
It could be out
care
on Europa.
in making sure
Something
that
with
the ground
resource.
tracking, because the entire descent is based upon the knowledge that the ground has and puts into the onboard computer of exactly where the spacecraft is. And this starts several revolutions before and then is carried ahead as the computer keeps track of its position. So during sequences like undocking, we have to be extremely careful that we do not disturb this knowledge of exactly where it is, because this then relates in the computer bringing the LEM down to a different spot than everyone thought we were coming in. This is what defines the error ellipse, where we might possibly land having targeted for the center. Now, the ability to be able to control where you are requires that you be able to identify features. And of course, in our particular landing site, this was selected to be as void of significant features as possible, to give us as smooth a terrain. Now, in any area like this, there are always certain identifying features that you can come out, certain patterns or craters. And to the extent that this can be used, if the crew sees that they are not going exactly toward the pre-planned point, they can begin to tell the computer to move to a slightly different landing location. Now, this can occur up in the region of 5,000 to 6,000 feet. Then as Neil took over control of our spacecraft to extend the range, to get beyond this large crater at West Crater, this again may be required if identification is made in the vicinity of 300, 400, 500 feet, to be able to maneuver that last in the vicinity of 1,000 to 2,000 feet to make a pinpoint landing. But so much depends on the early trajectory, the ability to then redesignate, and the final manual control.
For Mr. Armstrong and more on the landing, did at any time you consider an abort while you were getting the alarms and so forth?
Hell no.
Well, I think that in simulations, we have a large number of failures, and we're usually spring-loaded to the abort position. In this case, in the real real flight, we're spring-loaded to the land position. We were certainly going to continue with the
We either
descent
land or we die.
as long as we could
Yep.
safely do so. And
That was as
soon
hell no as they could have
soon as
said.
program alarms, computer alarms manifest themselves, why you realize that you have a possible abort situation to contend with. But our procedure throughout a preparation phase was to always try to keep going as long as we could, so that we could bypass these types of problems.
The computer was continuing to issue guidance throughout this time period and was continuing to fly the vehicle down in the same way that it was programmed to do. The only thing that was missing during this time period is that we did not have some of the displays on the computer keyboard, and we had to make several entries at this time in order to clear up that area.
Would the crew consider a moon mission of a similar nature again, or would you prefer to have some other kind of a mission? And secondly, I think this question was asked, but I didn't get the complete answer. How do you propose to restore some normalcy to your private lives in the years ahead?
I wish I knew the answer to the latter part of your question.
Kind of depends on you.
That was great. Well, if you leave us alone.
But I think the landings of the type that are presently considered for the next number of flights are appropriate to the conclusions that we reached as a result of both our descent work and work on a surface. And I would certainly hope that we are able to investigate the variety of types of landing sites that they hope to accomplish.
I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may. When you were carrying out that incredible moonwalk, did you find that the surface was equally firm anywhere, or were there harder and softer spots that you could detect? And secondly, when you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
The first part of your question, the surface did vary in its thickness of penetration. Somewhere in rather flat regions, the footprint would penetrate perhaps a half an inch or sometimes only a quarter of an inch and gave a very firm response. In other regions near the edges of these craters, we could find that the foot would sink down maybe 2, 3, possibly 4 inches. And in the slope, of course, the various edges of the footprint might go on up to 6 or 7 inches, and compacting this material would tend to produce a slight sideways motion as it was compacted on the material underneath it. So we feel that you cannot always tell just by looking at the terrain what the exact resistance will be as your foot sinks into a point of firm contact. So one must be quite cautious in moving around in this rough terrain.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit concerned, you said, about
No
stubbing your
stars?
toe.
That's the one that everybody rips apart and says when they said we didn't go. And
that kind of problem?
that's why they're looking at his face.
I think the simulations that we have at the present time to enable a pilot to understanding the problems of a lunar landing, that is the simulator and the various lunar landing training facilities and trainers.
I don't know, it still seems a little hard to believe.
Well, above that, I think it's just a matter of pilot experience.
This is for Neil Armstrong. You said early in your presentation that masculine W occurred about 3 seconds.
Do what?
Sorry, I'm just thinking like how they possibly couldn't see stars, and a lot of that could just be straight up because there's no like atmosphere. It could be getting blocked out by a lot of other things that we generally will not see with our eyes.
Well, there could be glare, because they're getting unabated sunlight. I mean, there could be.
It's like how you don't see stars in Chicago. You get light pollution.
Right. They were talking about could be some aberration of the eye from the lack of gravity, so they couldn't maybe make out finer details. I don't know if that was reported elsewhere. I don't know, but I know that a lot of people have used that to say, "Oh, we never went to the moon," and the look on his face looked like he that was a misstep, like he made an error, like that wasn't truthful. I don't know why you would lie about not seeing stars if you didn't really like. There's no benefit to not seeing stars. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It seems like an odd situation. It very well could have been he just made a misstep. I mean, they'd obviously just been through a lot. This is a pretty intense situation that they're in right now. Could he have simply made an error? I mean, I don't know. But you would think that, yeah, you could see stars, but then again, would they have been, like you said, washed out, like in Chicago or Los Angeles, where you can't see them because you're getting full sunlight? So
right, like we have the sunlight bouncing off the Earth, bouncing off of the sun itself, bouncing off the moon, uninhibited.
Right,
because they are on the bright side of the moon.
We'll go back to like right here because you know I'm terrible at finding where the hell I'm at, but. So we'll play back here and then play it through.
I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may. When you were carrying out that incredible moonwalk, did you find that the surface was equally firm anywhere, or were there harder and softer spots that you could detect? And secondly, when you looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
The first part of your question, the surface did vary in its thickness of penetration. Somewhere in rather flat regions, the footprint would penetrate perhaps a half an inch or sometimes only a quarter of an inch and gave a very firm response. In other regions near the edges of these craters, we could find that the foot would sink down maybe 2, 3, possibly 4 inches. And in the slope, of course, the various edges of the footprint might go on up to 6 or 7 inches, and compacting this material would tend to produce a slight sideways motion as it was compacted on the material underneath it. So we feel that you cannot always tell just by looking at the terrain what the exact resistance will be as your foot sinks into a point of firm contact. So one must be quite cautious in moving around in this rough terrain.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing any.
Neil, you were a little bit concerned, you said, about stubbing your toe at the point of landing because the surface was obscured by dust. Do you see any way around that kind of problem for future landings on the moon?
Seeing they whisper something to the other astronaut, too.
I think the simulations that we have at the present time to enable a pilot to understanding the problems of a lunar landing, that is the simulator and the various lunar landing training facilities.
Specifically through the optic he could.
Trainers that we have will do that job sufficiently well. Above that, I think it's just a matter of pilot experience.
This is for Neil Armstrong. You said early in your presentation that masculine W occurred about 3 seconds late, giving you the clue that you might land somewhat long. Now, this was before you got to Highgate, so that it had nothing to do with maneuvering to find a suitable place to land. I'm wondering what would have caused this 3 seconds late. Did it have something to do with the time that you began powered descent or what?
Well, the time that we started power descent was the planned time, but the question is, where are you over the surface of the moon at the time of ignition? And where that point is largely determined by a long chain of prior events. Tracking that's taken place several revolutions earlier, the slight maneuvers that have been
But I saw the
done
shake
in
of his head
checking
and his
out
whisper.
the
Yeah, it's also
systems,
odd
the
how the
undocking
camera just
and the ability to station
decided
keep
to
accurately without
zoom in at that point
ever
too.
flying very far away from where the computer thinks you ought to be at that time. And of course, the little bit of dispersions.
I'm
in
glad
maneuvers
Comer's
such as
gone, 'cause that would give
the
him
DOI burn on the backside of the moon
ammunition to
were not
say it was
quite
fake.
properly measured by.
But he's gone,
by the
so he
radar
won't
system.
never know.
Each of those
He'll
things
never know.
will accumulate into an effect, an error, a position error at ignition, and there is no way of compensating until you get to final phase for that error.
I mean, people make mistakes,
Based
though.
on your own experience in
It
in
could have been a
space,
misspeak. It could have been
do you or any
legitimate.
of you
I don't
feel
know.
that there will ever be an opportunity for a woman to become an astronaut in our space program?
Yes, I hope so.
I'd like to refer back to something that Neil Armstrong said a while back, that there was so much out there you would like to have done. As it was, you ended up a considerable number of minutes behind schedule. Is that because the schedule was
And that
overloaded to
response
the
was a
EVA,
mistake.
or can we expect all astronauts, when they reach the moon for the first time, to enjoy themselves and spend as much time doing so as you seem to?
We plead guilty to enjoying ourselves. As Buzz mentioned earlier, we're recommending that we start future EVAs with a 15 or 20-minute period to get these kinds of things out of the way. Get used to the surface and what you see, adapt to the 16G and maneuvering around. And probably we just included a little more in the early phase than we were actually able to do.
Two questions. Where did the weird sounds, including the sirens and whistles, come from during the trans-Earth coast? I believe ground control had asked for an explanation, saying it had come from the spacecraft. Secondly, I understand although low-angle lighting caused no problem walking around, there was a problem seeing obstacles in time when traveling at high speeds. I understand this might indicate the need for a flying machine rather than a rover for a long-distance lunar surface travel. Can you explain this?
We're guilty again. We sent the whistles and bells. We had a little tape recorder, which we used to record our comments during the flight. In addition, play music in the lonely hours. And we thought we'd share that with the people in the control center.
That's funny.
He's so uncomfortable.
The sun angle is less a problem for the things you mentioned than the lunar curvature and the local roughness. It seemed to me as though it was like swimming in an ocean with 6-foot or 8-foot swells and waves. In that condition, you never can see very far away from where you are. And this was even exaggerated by the fact that the lunar curvature is so much more pronounced.
This is for Mr. Armstrong. Had you planned to take over semi-manual control, or was it only your descent toward the West Crater that caused you to do that?
I believe one of them is still alive.
Series of control system configurations that were used during the terminal phase were in fact very close to what we would
Michael
expect
Collins
to use
recently
in the normal
passed.
case, irrespective of the landing area that
Aldrin
you found
is
yourself in.
deceased,
However, we
and
spent more
Armstrong
time
is
in the
deceased.
manual phase,
Correct?
I thought Aldrin was
than
still
we would have
alive.
planned in order
I
to
might be
find a
wrong.
suitable
Yeah,
landing
I think
area.
they're all dead. Yeah. Holy moly.
I think they all passed.
Many of us and many other people in many places
has speculated on the meaning of this first landing on another body in space. Would each of
No,
you
Buzz is
give
alive.
us,
Buzz is
He's
still
90
alive? Okay.
something.
of what is
Yeah.
the meaning of this to all of us?
Nope, Buzz is still kicking.
Okay. Yeah. I thought 100% Armstrong was deceased, and I know Collins just died, but I wasn't sure on the other one.
I believe that what this country set out to do was something that was going to be done sooner or later, whether we set a specific goal or not. I believe that
Armstrong is dead.
from the early space flights, we demonstrated a potential to carry out this type of a mission. And again, it was a question of time until this would be accomplished. I think the relative ease with which we were able to carry out our mission, which of course came after a very efficient and a logical sequence of flights, I think that this demonstrated that we were certainly on the right track when we took this commitment to go to the moon. I think that what this means is that many other problems perhaps can be solved in the same way by taking a commitment to solve them in a long time fashion.
The other one. Yeah, I know. Buzz.
Timely and accepting
Buzz
this
Lightyear.
To the
mission
rescue.
of going to the moon. It might be timely at this point to think in many other areas of other missions that could be accomplished.
Well, everybody looking at me? Well, to me, there are near and far term aspects to it. On the near term, I think it's a technical triumph for this country to have said what it was going to do a number of years ago, and then by golly, do it, just like we said we were going to do it. Not just perhaps purely technical, but also a triumph for the nation's overall determination, will, economy, attention to detail, and 1,001 other factors that went into it. That's short term. I think long term, we find for the first time that man has the flexibility or the option of either walking this planet or some other planet, be it the moon or Mars or I don't know where. And I'm poorly equipped to evaluate where that may lead us to.
I just see it as a beginning, not just this flight, but in this program, which has really been a very short piece of human history. An instant in history, the entire program. It's
Feel it coming in the air
beginning of
tonight.
a new age.
Neil, how much descent fuel did you have left when you actually shut down?
My own instruments would have indicated less than 30 seconds, probably something like 15 or 20 seconds. I think the analysis of
Damn.
made here on the ground indicates something more than that. Probably greater than 30 seconds, 40 or 45. That's a good, that sounds like a short time, but it really is quite a lot.
This is for Colonel Collins. You used a rather colorful expression when there seemed to be some problem with docking. Could you tell us precisely what was going on at that time, where you docked, and then...
Are you referring to the lunar orbit docking when, after the two vehicles made contact, a yaw oscillation developed? This oscillation covered perhaps 15 degrees in yaw over a period of of 1 or 2 seconds and was not normal. It was not nothing that that any of us had expected. It was not a serious problem. It was all over in an additional 6 or 8 seconds. The sequence of events is that the two vehicles are held together initially by 3 capture latches, and then a gas bottle, when fired, initiates a retract cycle, which allows the two to be more rigidly connected by 12 strong latches around the periphery of the tunnel. This takes 6 or 8 seconds for this cycle between initial contact and the retract. And it was during this period of time that I did have a yaw oscillation, or we did. Neil and I both took manual corrective action to bring the two vehicles back in line. And while this was going on, the retract cycle was successfully taking place, and the latches fired, and the problem was over.
2 questions. Colonel Aldrin, the pictures taken on the surface, your full portrait, shows distinct smudges of lunar soil on your knees. Did you fall down on the surface or kneel? And then for Mr. Armstrong, during the last few minutes there, before the landing, when the program alarms were coming on, and et cetera, would you have gone ahead and landed had you not had ground support?
To my recollection, my knees did not touch the surface at any particular time. We did not feel that we should not do this. We felt that this would be quite a natural thing to do, to recover objects from the surface, but at the same time, we felt that we did not want to do this unless it was absolutely necessary. We found quite early in the EVA that the lunar surface material did tend to adhere considerably to any part of the clothing. It would get on the gloves and would stay there. When you would knock either your foot or your hand against something, you would tend to shed the outer surface of this material, but there remained considerable smudges. I don't know how that got on the knees.
Neither of us fell down. We would have continued the landings so long as the trajectory seemed safe. And a landing is possible under these conditions, although with considerably less confidence than you have when you have the information from the ground and in the computer in its normal manner being available to you.
For Mr. Armstrong,
Landed no matter what. You just don't want the insubordination.
Would you please give us a bit more detail about your feelings, your reactions, your emotions during that last several hundred feet of power descent, especially when you discovered that you were headed for a crater full of boulders and had to change your landing spot?
Well, I'd first say that I expected that we would probably have to make some local adjustments to find a suitable landing area. I thought it was
Houston, we have a problem. That was 13, not 11.
We would be so fortunate as to come down in a very smooth area, and we planned on doing that. As it turned out, of course, we did considerably more maneuvering close to the surface than we had planned to do. And the terminal phase was absolutely chock full of my eyes looking out the window and Buzz looking at the computer and information inside the cockpit and feeding that to me. That was a full-time job.
My role during the latter 300, 200 feet is one of
Yeah, it was a
relaying as
different one.
much
It was
information that I
2
can
flights later. This
that's
is the
available
first
inside the cockpit
one
in the form of altitude,
with humans to
altitude
land on the
rate,
moon.
forward or lateral velocity. And it was my role of relaying this information to Neil so that he could devote most of his attention to looking out. What I was able to see in terms of the velocities and the altitudes appeared quite similar to the way we had carried out the last 100 or 200 feet in many of our simulations.
We are going to end here. We would appreciate it very much if you would remain seated so the crew could leave. They want to be at the luncheon at 1 o'clock, just slightly ahead of you. Thank you very much.
So that is the astronauts giving their press conference. Nothing groundbreaking there, but again, it's cool to have them recount what actually happened. It's cool to really kind of see what they were thinking and be able to question them on some of the specific events. So that has been the flight of Apollo 11, the first one with astronauts on the surface of the moon. And I think it's one of the most impactful technological achievements of our entire history as humans. It was incredible. It was nothing short of incredible. But with that being said, now it's been, what, 54 years? And we haven't been back. What the hell? But we are. We're going back. Allegedly. So now...
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Midstream Grift towards the end. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Thank you. Hydrogen 3, yeah. There's some significant fuel that could indeed be on the moon. So we hope. So here's coming up. This is the mission profile and the plan for the new mission to the moon, the Artemis program. So if you look into the naming conventions, Apollo and then Artemis is, the natural progression. But so anyways, we'll take a look at this one too.
We are going to the moon, to deep space, and to Mars. Humanity will venture further out into our solar system than ever
We'll get
before.
to that in just a minute.
But the history that awaits us requires a first step.
This is a story of a mission that represents that essential first step to the moon.
Yes,
A
Apollo
mission that
2 is
has
supposed to be
become the
manned.
first
Apollo
in a
3
series
is
of increasingly complex missions
Falcon
to
Heavy.
expand the bounds of human
Or,
exploration.
excuse me.
This is the story
Starship.
of
Sorry.
Artemis 1.
3, 2, 1.
This was
Boosters
Artemis
in
1.
position.
This is unmanned, but
And
this is
liftoff
kind
of
of the
Artemis
mission
1.
profile. This was the
We
test
rise
flight
together
for the new
back
mission
to the
profile.
moon and beyond.
Artemis 1 was a first flight that set new records of performance, exceeded our estimates for efficiency, and established new safety baselines for human flight into deep space. All before returning from this journey, plunging through Earth's atmosphere, and arriving safely back on our home planet.
Oh, Mandy, they want to put humans back on there.
The stakes riding on this mission technically, politically, programmatically were higher than anything I've ever witnessed. Anything less than the perfect operation of over 2 million parts that make up the Orion and SLS space vehicles, as well as the execution of tens of thousands of procedures during the flight. And it's likely that this generation, our generation, we lose the moon. And yet, as a first test flight of an entirely new spacecraft for over 25 days and crossing 1.4 million miles, Artemis 1 flew a near-perfect mission to the moon and back, flying a human-rated spacecraft in deep space farther and faster than ever before.
Artemis is basically a longer space shuttle main tank. The same SRBs
The
that
launch
have
of
been
Artemis 1 on
on
November 16th, 2022
everything.
was a demonstration
The
of new
same
generation of
RS-25s that
capabilities
were on the space
and
shuttle.
powerful performances.
And a brand new Orion capsule.
That night, the Block 1 version of SLS became the
It's a hella
most
retread.
powerful launch vehicle ever flown to orbit. SLS roared to life with 8.8 million pounds of thrust.
Let's go,
That is
Husky.
a
I'll meet
million
you down
pounds
there.
greater than even the mighty Saturn V.
To all personnel, STC,
STC spill.
OTC,
GTC. MCO.
Booster, go. Control, go. GNC, go. Prop, go. CDH, go. FIDO, go. FAO, go. MPO, go. All right, folks, go for launch.
At this time, I give you a go to resume count and launch Artemis 1.
And here we go.
10.
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiate. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1.
We stood only 3 miles away from the launch pad. And when that countdown clock hit 0, the SLS lit up the sky like daylight. And we were treated to the ground and air, reverberating the power of that first stage through our bodies. The crackling of the engines and the solid rocket motors was so distinct and even louder than when we launched space shuttles from that very same launch pad.
Confirmation that the solid rocket boosters have separated.
And then hearing the collective gasp of the crowd when we finally heard MECO, main engine cutoff.
The flight dynamics officer reports that we have a nominal main engine cutoff.
And everyone could finally breathe again. The first stage had done its job. That's a moment we will never forget.
Performance nominal. Copy nominal. Booster, how's the engine looking? Looking good, flight. Okay, FIDO, straight and narrow.
The technical perfection of this launch was equally as staggering. Artemis 1 achieved orbital insertion with an accuracy of 99.974%.
Oh, are you leaving, Digger? Good night.
That's a near
Later, Digger.
velocity bullseye. And a level of precision never flown before on a first flight.
The groundbreaking performances of this mission were highlighted further when the ICPS, or second stage, powered Orion through the perigee raise maneuver, followed by the translunar injection, or TLI burn. They put Artemis 1 spacecraft on a near-perfect trajectory to the moon.
Flight control, ICPS is in attitude control and maneuvering to solenoid.
Copy, good news.
Of course, you have to market to get more money, and
The
they have
views of
to
our
get more
blue
money, so
marble
they have
in
to
the
market.
blackness of space, now capturing the imagination of a new generation, the Artemis generation.
The untapped scientific and resource potential of the moon is incredible. The lunar environment will help us better understand the origins of our solar system, to prove the in situ resource utilization and technology demonstrations required to reach even further into our solar system. But none of that is possible without first successfully reaching the moon with a human-rated spacecraft.
After TLI,
proximity.
teams used Orion to reach a never-before-attempted, highly stable, but also fuel-efficient orbit around the moon, the Distant Retrograde Orbit, or DRO.
So we're all set for OpNav coming up here in about 20 minutes. Correct. Okay, thanks.
Flying by on the entry to the DRO put Orion within a mere 80 nautical miles of the lunar surface. That was close. And this path used the moon's gravity to slingshot Orion out to a new record for a human-rated spacecraft's distance from our home planet of Earth, nearly 270,000 miles away.
And it was in those harsh environments that Artemis 1 truly shined, increasing our understanding of how to confidently operate in deep space. On flight day 13, we canceled a planned orbital maintenance burn because it was simply unnecessary. On flight day 20, we ignited the main engine once again and began the long journey back to Earth.
From this view, Orion
You
is
can- I mean, you can see it,
1,277 miles above
You
the
see
lunar surface,
Earth more prominently
following
because
its
you're only
return-powered
230,000
flyby burn,
miles away.
which sent it around the back of the moon. Orion now has its sights set on home.
Artemis 1 set out to fulfill a number of requirements, but the highest priority for this mission was to demonstrate the performance of Orion's heat shield at lunar return velocities. So during re-entry, the largest heat shield of its kind ever made by humans had to prove that it could protect crews from temperatures that exceed 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's nearly half the temperature of the surface of the sun.
Orion hurtled towards the Earth at 24,500 miles per hour, Mach 32. and initiated the first ever skip reentry. This is the first time that humankind has skipped a spacecraft off the Earth's atmosphere.
For those of us who have flown shuttle, Soyuz or Dragon, coming back from the International Space Station, we wear these Mach 25 patches. This is the return velocity from low Earth orbit. But Mach 32, that lunar return velocity, that's a whole order of magnitude more energy to dissipate.
Mm-hmm.
So there we were. Orion had just traveled nearly
Can we just
1.4
protect
million
80
miles.
degree people?
And it's these last few miles that will make or break the mission.
We are now in the entry phase.
The team stood silent. Mission control room was deathly quiet as Orion entered the blackout period. And it was tense. We had no telemetry. We had no comms. We had no visual. All we could do was simply wait.
Standing by for a reacquisition
On
of
blackout
signal.
because
This
of
is the moment
plasma.
of truth for Orion.
Plasma buildup, com blackout.
And then suddenly there it is.
And there is a view of Orion.
I mean, Orion has survived the flaming hot re-entry. Mission control consoles all come alive with data again. We're on glide slope. The drogue's deployed, but again, we're at the point where we're all holding our breath. And there they were.
4 mains.
The
Three
three
mains.
big, beautiful main parachutes fully deployed. And we watch Orion gently settle into the Pacific Ocean.
Splashdown. Orion back on Earth.
We are speechless. We are ecstatic. I mean, we did it. At that moment, we could say, without hesitation or reservation, the Artemis generation, our generation, has had its first flight. We are going to the moon.
Redstone.
Statistics show that even through today, newly developed rockets have a failure rate of 50%. And generally, there is no rocket that performs perfectly on the first flight. And yet, SLS performed magnificently. This vehicle was described by space experts as symmetry in motion. There were 140 planned test objectives in the timeline. Artemis 1 achieved each and every one with such precision that the teams expanded the envelope with 21 additional test objectives. Because of the Artemis 1 mission, we retired risks that could have delayed or unraveled the ambitions of this generation, our generation, to return to the moon.
Because of the Artemis 1 mission, we have demonstrated our ability to go farther and faster than ever before, opening the door to explore Mars and other destinations throughout the solar system. By nearly every single metric, Artemis 1 was a resounding success.
Just as Orville and Wilbur Wright were the first to achieve human flight, 50 years from now, we will look back
On about
and
$1
point to
billion
how
over
our
budget.
efforts to venture out
I
into
am
deep
too, don't
space
worry.
began here. Our voyage out into the solar system started with this first flight.
And yet, this is but a prelude to what comes next.
Ladies and gentlemen, your Artemis 2 crew.
Fuck up, Bill Nelson.
Human beings will fly around the moon next on Artemis 2, simply because of the demonstrated amazing success of this first flight.
Thank you to the NASA workforce. Thank
Wow,
you
they
to our
got rid of
industry
the
partners. Everyone in
African-American
Europe is
woman.
working for this.
Not
We
the
need to
black
celebrate
man.
this moment in human history. It is the next step on the journey that gets humanity to Mars.
that's a pretty
America
convincing
has made a
transition.
very deliberate choice over decades to curate a global team, and we are going to the moon together.
When I think about this mission, that's a relay race with international partners, it's also so awesome in and of itself. So, am I excited? Absolutely.
I want everybody to say it. 1, 2, 3. We
Coke,
You
Glover, Wiseman,
and
and
I, we are
Hansen.
all truly part of the Artemis generation.
This entire video was a give me more money video.
That's exactly what it is. So that is the plan for Artemis 2. Artemis 3 will be SpaceX. So this is the Artemis 3. They were awarded the contract for 1 spaceflight to the moon. And this is Artemis 3. So following Artemis 2.
The importance of landing humans back on the moon is we're going back in a way that is totally different. We've had almost 60 years of experience, and we're taking every single ounce of experience we have and taking that with our international partners, with our commercial partners.
We've been working for the last year with 3 partners who will help us achieve the next human mission to the moon. Because we know that this first step to the moon will then lead us to go to Mars. And we know that the human landing system is one of the first steps to get us there. And so we've been working with Dynetics, Alido's company. We've been working with Blue Origin, who have partners of Draper, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman. In addition, we've also been working with SpaceX.
So they're gonna nuke the moon because Lockheed Martin's there.
Yeah. And Boeing and...
Oh my God.
Hang on. Husky asked for a poll. This is the NASA worm logo. Which logo's better? Which one do you like better? The worm. This is the worm. This is the meatball. Worm. Meatball. Pick your fave.
Ooh.
This is a very, very exciting
It's kind of hard.
landing system program. They've spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over this last couple years getting ready for this moment.
We're really excited to bring you the
They're
announcement
both bad.
of who NASA is going to continue to finish out the human landing system
I won't
and
tell
take
who I
humans
picked.
back to the moon.
Who I like. I like them both.
NASA has chosen SpaceX to return us to the moon. I am so excited to partner with SpaceX in this fantastic
Worm font
endeavor
on the
for
meatball
Artemis
logo?
suite of missions. So congratulations to the SpaceX
Maybe.
team.
The SpaceX design
They
is a
may, I don't
single-stage
know.
solution using their Starship. It provides extensive volume for the crew with 2 airlocks and ample down mass capability. The SpaceX proposal included in-space propellant transfer demonstration and uncrewed test landing.
So now that we've selected our partner, and for the next
God, more.
It took me way too long,
to
Mandy,
make
to
sure
find
the
out that you
testing
just said
occurs,
sex.
because we're not going to launch humans until we have a successful test. So we will be working to make sure that the design and everything that we have going forward so far is ready to go.
So the human landing system is going to allow us to be able to access different parts of the lunar surface. But it also allows us to explore a new technology and capabilities that will help us when we are trying to figure out our next round of technologies to be able to help us land on Mars or other planets out there.
I'd like to thank the companies for the great work this past year. We've all learned a lot. I'd like to thank the
Well, at least
NASA
Mandy's
team
not going to go lose a tool
because
belt.
you have definitely risen to this challenge.
It is one more step and an exciting group of steps that will get us to a sustainable human landing
That suit is
system
too puffy.
to the moon.
Oh, the new suits are terrible. Have you seen the new suits?
No.
Oh,
I like the SpaceX suits.
yeah.
generally.
Hang on. Artemis suits.
Mandy, you better hold your tongue or I will man spread right into your personal bubble.
Hold it. Hold it.
I want to be the pink Power Ranger. No, shoot, the white Power Ranger.
Let's take a look at the spacesuits of the Artemis generation.
This lady can't walk.
So to be clear, Christine is wearing a spacesuit that will fit all of our astronauts when we go to the moon. And it is also true that we have with Christine, Amy Ross, who is a spacesuit engineer. And we have Dustin Gomert, who is wearing not a spacesuit that we're going
Can we pause this real quick?
moon, but on the way to the
Yep.
Why the hell did it look like it got bigger?
It did. It got significantly bigger.
Like the stuff that they were using on the Apollo 11 was significantly smaller
Mm-hmm.
and didn't look so dumb.
Exactly.
What
But these ones are articulated now. So the legs move, the midsection moves so you can turn, the arms are articulated.
Like, I know, but those also just seem like failure points.
I agree. No, I think it's absolutely hideous. I think it is incredibly hideous.
Yeah, no, the aliens are going to bully us like we're like in high school again. They're going to shove us into a space locker.
It's bad. It's really bad.
They're going to go find water on Mars just to fucking give us a swirly.
All right, vote in the poll if you're going to vote. Closing in 10 seconds. Yeah, that it is expensive for no reason. They're incredibly expensive. They are not very good. Have some significant issues with the actual suit. And do you expect anything less out of NASA?
I hope it's lighter than the Apollo 11 suits, though. Like,
Nope.
at least, please tell me it's at least that.
Nope.
What the hell is wrong with these people?
Considerably heavier. They use this
That
underwater
means that-
at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, yeah.
Wait.
For testing and training. The NBL, they use them underwater.
The Apollo 11 men were having a hard time moving around because their pack was kind of still heavy on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it heavier, and they're giving it to a woman who statistically is going to be weaker.
Whoa. 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 This is 2024 we're talking about, almost. Women and men are the same.
The roids are going to be great. You're right.
But no, I mean, it's garbage. It truly is. All right, I'm going to end the poll. 62% meatball, 38% worm. I actually like the worm better.
I was going to say 62% of you are wrong.
Fucking Brian, costing me subs every day. But They should have put a dude in it just so it looked less ridiculous. Yeah. So your center of gravity's got to be way off with your life support system on your head, essentially. That's essentially on the back of her head.
Well, for dudes, our center of gravity's higher, so it's more natural.
Right.
Where she looks like she's about to fall over because she doesn't know how to walk with the higher up center of gravity.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like I think it's poorly designed. And just looks like a mess. It does not look like 60-year advance in technology from the last time we went.
It's like, when you have a backpack on and it's like got like 8 textbooks in it and like 17 pencils,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like dragging you backwards, and like it's easier to walk if you like have it shifted down on your body. Well, yeah, no, they said, nah, we're gonna put it on your head, crank it upwards, and make it like hang from the top of your shoulders instead. Like these people are just asking to fall over.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think it's a poor design. But this wasn't be critical of Spacesuit Day.
Well, no, it's be critical of NASA Day.
Yeah. But so that is the previous program, the Apollo program, and everything that it was, and everything that it did for our nation, for the space program, for science, for so many things. And that's looking to the future where it is not at all similar. Like, in my opinion, we've taken a considerable step back. We're using old technology, old engines from the 60s and 70s. I think 70, I forget what year. I think it was late 70s, but
it's NASA for you.
I think we've taken a considerable step back. And they said it was a positive flight for Artemis, but that remains to be seen. We'll see how effective they are moving forward. I hope for the best, because I would really like to return to the moon. I think it would be incredibly beneficial if we could go explore the moon again. But boy, would I love a stream about SLS. I'll talk to you about that personally, Husky. That may or may not be possible. It could be. We'll talk about it. Lions Broncos game. It's on Mandy 1. It's almost over. 2. It's on NFL Network, and I don't have NFL Network. The Leos are up 35-10. 12 minutes ago in the fourth quarter. So that is going to be it for us, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank everybody for joining us through reliving history, through the Apollo program, and looking forward to the Artemis program. Like I said, I think it was the most influential scientific achievement that humanity's ever had. I think it opened the door for so many things. So, and it was such a successful set of missions, and it really shows the best of what humanity can achieve. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Brad, do you have anything to tack on at the end of this topic?
I really liked this topic. This one was a good one.
Yeah, I thought so too. So
I got to see a whole lot of stuff that I never saw before. And who knows? Maybe it is fake. They can't see stars.
Our fighter jet are very old, and I think they're gonna fight to fix first. Well, the F-35 is much like the SLS. Over budget, not as effective. All those things. So, but yeah, so next Saturday, Brian and I are going to go over light speed, some light general relativity, why light speed's not possible. But it is possible, and so on and so forth. We're gonna get into it, get into some theoretical physics, and some different types. So hopefully you guys join us next Saturday. We'll certainly have some things to talk about. And until then, what do I got coming up? History of Detroit tomorrow, 1861 to 1890. And then Monday, we will finish the witnesses in the Matt Moore trial with Matthew. Tuesday is Digger and I forgot what she said. Bill, we're doing Bill Cooper, but I forget what the next topic is. We're doing something.
Bill Clinton. I was like, oh.
No. William Cooper, the conspiracist. But I forgot what our next topic is. I think it's the occult on Tuesday. But yeah, I'll have plenty of time to talk about that before. Thursday, get back to news and views, and that is Kid Rock sold out. I haven't seen anything. I'll look at it for sure. I haven't heard anything though. But I'll look into it for sure, Linda. And yes, I will talk about it because it will piss me off if he did.
Oh, he did.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Well,
sorry, bud. Ruin your Saturday night.
It happens. So I'll look into it. Backing Bud Light again. Yeah, UFC did too. I don't know. Yeah, I'll look into it and I'll talk to you, or I'll talk about it for sure. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for us tonight. Thank you guys for watching. Please hit that thumbs up on your way out if you have not already. And please subscribe if you have not. Until next time, take care, y'all, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Peace.